25th day. As you noticed, we started the morning at -32 and we're at -16 now. So, you can't get any place better than Stony Plain where we can warm up, half the amounts that we were yesterday. So, nice and warm today. It's gonna be a balmy -4 or 5 tomorrow. So, we're living the good life to be sitting in -3 at this time of year. So members of council, you have an agenda before you. If I have a motion, please, Deputy Mayor.
Council adopt the February 25th, 2019 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Okay. Any additions from council or administration? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. That is carried. Move on to a public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to address council on anything that's not on the agenda. Is there anybody in council chambers who'd like to talk to council? Okay. See none, move on to presentations and delegations. Today, we have I guess it's a presentation, or maybe not a presentation, Councillor Loy.
Sorry, sir.
Is it a presentation?
I don't have a presentation.
All right, we have appointment of a new deputy mayor, which is will be Councillor Loy at the time, so it is. Let us go down there, Councillor Loy. We'll finish this up before we take the vote.
Throw you off when I said that?
Yes, I didn't think you didn't want to be. I like being deputy mayor. Oh, I see how much work the other guys have. At your right hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can repeat after me, sir. So, I, Councillor Bruce Loy,
I, Councillor Bruce Loy,
swear that I will diligently,
swear that I will diligently,
faithfully,
faithfully,
and to the best of my ability,
and to the best of my ability,
execute according to law
execute according to law
the office of deputy mayor
the office of Deputy Mayor
for the town of Stony Plain
for the town of Stony
in the
Plain
province of Alberta.
in the province of Alberta.
So help me God.
So help my God.
So, Councillor Laurie, the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Town Council appoint Councillor Bruce Loy as Deputy Chief Elected Official for the term of February 25th, 2019 to June 30th, 2019, or until the appointment of the next Deputy Chief Elected Official. Deputy Chief Elected Official shall be given the title of Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. And before we go on to questions and comments, I'd like to thank our previous Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mattis. Thank you very much for your work and attending a few meetings on my behalf. That help was a great help to me as you attended those meetings. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Loy, you don't have any say in this, so you have to accept it as is for the next 6 months. Well, 4 months, actually. So you're like,
I do have a say there, sir.
yep, 4 months. My apologies. Members of council, any comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Congratulations, sir. Okay, moving on, there's no statutory public hearings. Moving on to adoption of minutes, the RCM, February 11th. Councillor Bennett.
I move the Town Council approve the February 11th, 2019 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. Members of council, you've had a chance to look through it. Any errors or omissions or questions on that? See none, I didn't have any either, so I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Move on to 7.1, the Stony Plain FCSS. Councillor Mattis, please.
That Town Council receive the committee minutes for information and place on file.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Members of council, any questions regarding the minutes from the Stony Plain FCSS? Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if it's in this new minutes or not, but I was just, I was curious. I noticed that at the council, the Spruce Grove Council meeting that, we attended, Spruce Grove FCSS gave a report about the poverty and homelessness study. Is Stony Plain FCSS working together with Spruce Grove FCSS on this initiative?
Okay. Councillor Matties?
Your worship, through to Judy, to Councillor Bennett, with regards to the homeless study, is that what you're referring to? They did do a presentation in Spruce Grove, and I was surprised that happened because at the last meeting I was told they were waiting for a consolidation of all information from the communities before they would be giving a presentation. So they obviously presented their specific information and maybe not of the whole group. I'm hoping to hear very quickly from that as well, but she didn't have a timeline for us because she didn't know when all the information was going to be compiled.
Okay. So I was at the meeting and I heard the presentation. So one of the questions asked by one of the members of council in Spruce Grove was that how closely will Spruce Grove work with Stony Plain? And the answer is closely. We're just a couple of steps ahead because we accepted our reduction strategy about a year and a half ago. So we're just now going to just kind of onboard and dovetail everything together so that we're working together a little bit better.
Thank you.
And also, I believe Parkland County is also doing their own study as well. Councillor Lowry?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Matties as the representative on FCSS, understanding that we are a little bit further ahead than Spruce Grove in our poverty reduction strategy. I know there was an effort in the fall undertaken for a essentially homeless count in the region, and there was to be a report generated and the information presented to council. Do you have any information as to when that report might be coming forward?
Yes.
I actually thought that it was the presentation that was in Spruce Grove that was on the homeless study, but you're saying it was on the poverty?
No, it was on the homeless and poverty strategy.
Okay.
So something that we've already accepted within our own town, Stony Plain.
So my comment that I had just made with regards to the homeless study, that they're waiting for all communities to compile the information together. And the director of FCSS could not give us the date as to when they were going to be able to provide that information to us. And they're just waiting until it's compiled.
Thank you. Can you give us an idea as to what other communities they're waiting for? I understand this occurred in October, November, and we're now almost the beginning of March. My understanding was this was just a tri-region
That's my
count?
That's my understanding. Yes, but it's Parkland County, right, as well?
Yeah.
And there's some communities within Parkland County that they're waiting for, I believe.
Okay, so did they do the count at the same time? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That's good questions, and hopefully the representative asks the questions at the next board
I
meeting.
will, for sure.
Any more questions and comments regarding the Stony Plain FCSS December 12 minutes? Okay. See none, so I'll call the question to accept for information. All in favor? Yeah, that's carried. Moving on to business items. 8.1 is bylaws on assessment review. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Choi. Each year we bring back the Assessment Review Board bylaw to have Council pass the members that will be sitting on the Assessment Review Boards for the LARB and the CARB. And we brought that together today. And we also combined two bylaws. We used to have a complaints manager and the Assessment Review Board, and checking with our counterparts that were also using CRASC, everybody had combined it into one bylaw. And it cleans it up quite a bit and makes it more efficient. So that's what we've done. We've combined two bylaws, and we're going, instead of having a Schedule A, we'll just ask you to pass a resolution each year to assign them board members.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of clarity? Okay. Councillor Meyer, motion please.
Yes, Your Worship. I make a motion by the town council give first reading to bylaw 2607 AS 19, the Assessment Review Board.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. So, members of council, as the background, this is something that council has done for the last few years, 8 years, since we changed to this format, and this is a yearly thing. Any questions and comments regarding that? No. Okay, I just have one quick question. So the members that we are approving with this, these are the ones that have been past the provincial regulations and are accredited to sit on a CARB or a LARB?
Mayor Choi, yes, CRASC provides us with this member list, and they're all approved and all have passed the provincial regulations successfully.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay. For first reading, call the question. All in favor? Okay. Council Pletchko, please, second reading.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 2607 AS 19.
Okay, further comment? Call the question on second reading. All in favor? That's carried. Deputy Mayor, unanimous consent, please.
Yes, Your Worship. The Town Council gives unanimous consent to consider third reading to bylaw 2607/AS/19.
Okay, thank you. So for the members that are in the gallery and to the members that are watching, if council does 3 readings in one evening or one sitting, we have to have unanimous consent. So I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Mattis, please.
That town council give third reading to bylaw 2607/AS/19.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Just one comment, and thank you, Councillor Bennett. I think I see your name up in the members list, so thank you for serving our community and all members that are part of CRASC. So I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to 9.2. Oh, sorry. Moving on to business items. 9.1 is the appointment. So if I can, presentation, go ahead.
Mayor Choi and councils, this is simply the resolution to pass the board members that have been presented by CRASC.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the Town Council approve the list of qualified assessment review board members for the 2019 calendar year as submitted by the Capital Region Assessment Services Commission.
Okay. Thank you. No, do we need to read all names into the record, or just because we have them? No, it doesn't need to be. Okay, members of council, you see the recommendation, the list. These individuals have passed their training for this to sit on the assessment review board. Does anybody know a reason why any of these people should not or cannot sit? Okay, see none. Any questions or comments? Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you stated, all of these appointees have been passed and they're qualified. I would just wonder if would it be out of line to have some background information on these individuals, or would that be considered not necessary?
I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure the Assessment Review Board does their own screening, and this is, so they've actually passed all the tests and all their reviews, and this is coming for us to ratify because we are part of the members. Does anybody know how the process works? That's how I remember it.
Mayor Choi through to Councillor Myers. The municipalities submit names in the past, and so as initially everybody submitted quite a few names. And so through the years, we found that we don't have very many hearings, and so we don't require as many board members. And so as people's training has expired, we haven't renewed as many. Like Councillor Bennett has been on it for quite a while now, and she's very good. So I think that the experience and plus because the municipalities have submitted those names, I think that's the qualification there.
Okay, go ahead.
Would you like a little for your information?
Definitely.
So for your information, very few of these members are actually councillors. You do not need to be a counselor, and in fact, I'm almost sure that they have now limited the number of counselors that can sit on this assessment review board. So most of these people, I know Stuart Henning was a counselor, he's now retired. Raymond Ralph is the mayor of Devon, and so he and I are the only ones that are actually counselors. The rest are public members. They all of us have to go through the municipal government education is where we get our training, and we do it every 3 years. We get upgraded, or we need to renew our information. So that's kind of a little bit of information on the members.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship, and actually, Councillor Bennett answered my question. I was just going to ask what the balance of elected to non-elected officials that sat on this were, so I appreciate it.
Councilor Matthews?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett, just a question with regards to the two review boards, the LARB and the CARB. With regards to the tax notice, other than the property tax notice that will be heard by the LARB, what would those so would those be commercial?
Yes, go ahead.
The bar.
Yes.
So there's two different categories. One is on businesses and more than 3 or 4 units, and the other is for residential. LARB is for residential, and CARB is for the businesses.
Thank you.
Businesses and more than 4 units.
Okay.
So apartment buildings, things like that. So when people are disgruntled with their assessment, we have to remember that it's their house assessment that they're disgruntled with. This has nothing to do with their taxes. It's the housing assessment. Then they file with our department and our assessment agency that we've hired, and they try to accommodate, and they try to work out, explaining why their assessment is so high and how assessments are made. And if the resident is still not convinced that the assessment is either too high or too low, then they put in a what's the word? They object to it. And so then it goes from there to CRASC, and then CRASC hears the complaints. It's a complaint.
Yes.
Follow up. So if I have a roof that isn't replaced and it's leaking, and I have a cracked driveway, can I send in a letter saying that my assessment is too high because of all the work that has to be done in the house? It's not the equivalent value to others?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and we have the forms, and our corporate services will work with you to determine and to explain how the assessment is made.
Thanks.
Okay. And since we're talking about assessments, the town of Stony Plain is having an open house on March 12th for our assessment value. So if members of our community, they should have received their housing assessments now. So if they want to figure out how the town or the assessor came to that value, then that's open from March 12th from 12 to 7. So they'll be here for 7 hours, and then they have the assessor here and some of their staff will go through the process of how they determined it. And some of it's market value, some of it's driven by other data. One of the biggest things that I learned when I was sitting on the CAS board was that assessment value is always a year behind, so it lags a year, because based on the municipal government standards, we have to have 1 year of data. So that's why it's always a year behind our current market value. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. A question either for Councillor Bennett or for administration. For a LARB or a CARB hearing, is that held by the entire board or is it held by a small panel selected of the board? And a follow-up to that, if it's within the member's municipality, do they or don't they hear that?
Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's a small, usually 3 members. And out of this number of appointees, they send out an email to see who's available. And so from there, it's a panel of 3. And what was your second question?
So if an assessment was going to the LARB or the CARB from, say, the town of Stony Plain or the town of Devon, would yourself or Mayor Ralph be able to sit on that panel?
No.
Excellent,
No,
thank you.
we don't sit on our own municipalities.
Okay. Yes, that's a good question, Councillor Lori. That was one of the reasons why Council back in 2010 adopted to go with CRAS, is because we were hearing our own assessment reviews, which kind of didn't make any sense. So this is a third party reviewing the assessment values of our properties in the town of Stony Plain. Any other questions, comments? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. That is carried. Moving on to 9.2, health and safety policy. And go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Mayor Choi and Council. My name is Jackie Verkland. I'm the Manager of Human Resources here at the town, and here with me tonight is Josh Reashore. He is our Occupational Health and Safety Coordinator here at the town. We are bringing forward 2 health and safety policies that currently exist as council policies. First one being the health and safety policy attached to this agenda package. We've had reviewed it recently due to changes with the Occupational Health and Safety Act and core audit requirements. Those changes are reflected into the draft that's presented here tonight, and we're looking for approval for that change. The second policy being the workplace violence, bullying, and harassment policy. Currently sitting as a council policy. However, we're looking for approval from council to change that to an administrative policy. Reasoning for that is the health and safety policy discussed as item 1 here is the town's overarching health and safety policy and addresses the town's commitment and objectives behind safety here at the town, whereas the workplace violence, bullying, and harassment policy is an administrative component to that health and safety policy. So we're bringing that forward for consideration tonight.
Thank you very much. And a motion, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Town Council approve the health and safety policy C HS 035 as presented, and to repeal the workplace violence, bullying, and harassment policy CHS 018 and direct administration to finalize an administrative policy to cover workplace violence, bullying, and harassment.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, you had the update, and open the floor for questions and comments. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question isn't exactly about this, about these policies, but we were receiving incentives from health and safety, however many hours with no accidents, received so many points, and gifts were given out, that kind of thing. What have we changed that so that the incentives that we get for our great work policies and safety is now being rewarded in another way?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We believe that you're referring to the annual rebate that was provided. Those dollars are used to fund health and safety lunches for staff. That is the current process that we use.
Oh, good, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I was always We used to get gifts. I think the last one was cooler bags, and I always thought that that money would be better served for our staff who have actually initiated such great policies and adhere to them. So that's good news. Thank you.
Your Worship, if I may on that too, just a couple other things that I know that Jackie or Josh could speak more to it, but I know just a couple weeks ago I was out with our staff at HP3. They did the best of, I believe, throughout the year at hazard assessments? Inspections, workplace inspections. So we, got a picture with them and stuff, and I think they might have got a small gift as well. And there's often quite a few different little things going on as a call it incentive or reward or what have you, just to thank staff for their diligence on the safety side of it, but also to bring some awareness to it and so on and so forth. And if you ever are wondering, in our coffee rooms, there is an OHS board that will have the minutes and the newsletters and so on and so forth. And I'll leave it at that, Your Worship, but there's quite a few different little things that go on throughout the year by the HR team to promote health and safety too.
Good. Thank you. And I just advise councillors not to talk to Mr. Reshore about his thoughts and policies about safety in the workforce. I think he has a different point of view. That's just earlier. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just two quick questions. First off being with this changing from a council policy to an administrative policy, I noticed the scope does say the policy applies to employees, council, and external customers. I'm guessing that would remain the same, changing from a council level to administrative level. And my second question is in response to this policy versus the code of conduct policy. There's what I see to be a significant overlap in some of the areas of this policy and the code of conduct policy. Should one of those policies be revised so that it only exists in one?
Yeah, good question. But
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So currently the Code of Conduct did make some reference to the workplace violence, bullying and harassment policy. And so our thought was that when the Code of Conduct comes forward, we would update that to have the specific clauses that are applicable to council so that it's clear to council, this is what directly applies to you and is very relevant, and then gives us the administrative flexibility. It seems to be a very hot topic right now, and so we wanted that flexibility to be able to adjust the policy with things that are changing, especially around social media and all the bullying requirements in there, as well as in the OHS Act. There's a lot more specific words and requirements that we must, as the employer, have in our policies. So that was sort of the thought around that and where we hope to take the Code of Conduct to clarify between the two.
that's good. Councillor Matties.
Through to administration. I just have a question. I read this on Saturday morning, so I'm not sure if in terms of the question I'm asking, I'm not sure if it's a correct process, but I had to read it a second time tonight because when it talked about the definitions, it talked about a contractor and a volunteer, so that made me go back up to the top to see who this referred to, and it is employees, contractors, and volunteers, correct? So why do we not have a definition for the employee? Page 39 out of 97.
I think she's asking why isn't there a staff definition here? Your Worship, through to Councillor Matties. I think that when we look at it, the staff would be the staff, we would look at that as the definition of an employee within the town. And so the contractor and volunteer was a new requirement under the core audit standard that they wanted that clearly defined within the policy. And so the definition of the employee was not, or staff was not a requirement, and thought that was explainable that we didn't put in the definition.
May I just follow up? When you have the scope right above it, it says we are committed to the health and safety management system that protects our staff, contractors, and volunteers. So it just seems to me, and I'm no more discussion after that is needed, but I just think you should have all three listed there in definitions.
Okay. So that's a change in the actual policy. So members of council, you guys okay with that? Right. Okay, so it currently does not add that in there, so if it's not unanimous, then Councillor Mattis, I'll need you to make the motion to add that into the definitions.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to add in the definition the employee or staff.
Okay, so with that, then I'll accept that, and then our council conservation debate will be around adding that under definitions, employee or staff. Okay, members of council, comments? Councillor Bennett?
What does that send this policy back to our staff to look at it and come before us again? Or do they just cross it out with the red and put it in and it's not a big deal? I don't necessarily feel like it needs to be in there. Our staff would be, our staff. And if it's going to cause any other work for our staff to incorporate this, I just don't see a need for it. If it's simply a matter of sticking in another definition, then it can go, doesn't bother me, but I don't want any extra work for our staff.
Okay, so thank you. So administration, can you provide the reasoning again with the new updated health and safety, why staff wasn't defined or then not necessary?
Yeah, Your Worship certainly can provide some further comment. I think as the General Manager indicated, we chose in this instance to define contractor and volunteer and put some definition around there because those are in some ways could be interpreted a little vaguer. They're not quite as defined as what, within the wording of the scope. I mean, staff, frankly, and specifically refers to people who are employed by the town of Stony Plain. As to Councillor Bennett's comments about what would happen next, we would probably just put one word over there, move a definition. It wouldn't be a whole lot of effort, but I believe, the intent here is that we were, we chose to pick out those two, as they mentioned. I believe they are new and through the legislation. But I guess, the caution I would give is we don't define property, we don't define members of the public, we don't define incidents, we don't define parameters. Respectfully, if we're going to start defining every single, where would we stop and how far along do we want to go with that?
Okay. Councillor Mattis?
Your Worship, through to administration, it's just that when you talk about staff, you can include full-time, part-time, you could have summer casual, you could have step. Are they all covered or are they not? And I don't know that. So just basically it clarifies it. And to me, you don't have to have every situation, but if you'd say a definition of, all people paid, or whatever it is that would define it.
Okay. Just before I go to Councillor Laurie, I just want to, that does raise a good question, Councillor Mattis, because when you do that and you ask the question of staff being all paid staff members, but also in the bylaw says members of the public. So is that members of our public that reside in town Stony Plain or another municipality? Like who's covered? So do we need a definition for that? And then I think mentioned again property. So what is defined as property? Is it the town Stony Plain owned property? Is it somebody else's owned property? Now that does beg the question, do we need to define everything in the scope or do we just kind of not? Councillor Laurie?
Your Worship, the first question through to administration is the policy that's been put before us here is the draft, is an edited policy numbered C-HS-014. which was dated June 22nd of 2015. The current policy, however, is C-HS-018, which was dated June 13, 2016. I'm just wondering why we updated an old policy that no longer existed rather than updating the current policy we have in place.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So CHS 014 is the current policy for health and safety in place, and this is just an updated version of that. And so the yellow highlights within your agenda package are the changes that were made to HS 014. Our legislative process is that upon council approving a new policy, it's given a new number just to keep it clear as to what the date was approved and that that is the new policy number.
Okay.
Okay. That doesn't quite address Councillor Laurie's question. So,
Your Worship, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood.
Maybe this is a little more clarification then. Is CHS 018, which is, workplace violence, bullying, and harassment, is that then rolling in under the new health and safety policy?
from what I understand, that's getting repealed, and then it will be an administrative policy that deals with all that stuff.
Okay.
Right, because on the motion made is to repeal that workplace policy.
And that is because it falls under the umbrella then
Of the health and
of
safety.
CHS 035. That is the explanation as to why that's being repealed and moved.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Councilor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. With health and safety being the forefront of a lot of things nowadays, I'm just curious why we are only reviewing this every 3 years. I get it's in accordance with the Alberta Municipal Health and Safety Association protocol, but it is something that's pretty forefront in most places today. Is there, do you feel that that's adequate at this time?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Pletchko. I think it is adequate because this, to me, is the overarching statement that safety is very important to the town. So we do have a position, Josh, that deals with safety all day long. There are tons of processes and procedures in place within the town to make sure that workers are being safe and that we're supporting that as management. So I think for me, the overarching policy, that is sufficient and that would meet the requirements under the core as well as the legislation. But I do take your point very seriously, and I think we do at the town here look at safety as a serious concern and are always making sure that we're looking at it with fresh eyes and making sure workers have that support in place as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I'm going to have to pull council back to what we're actually talking about first. We're kind of, I've been a little lenient, but we're still talking about Councillor Maddie's to add the definition of staff. Right.
That's correct, you're right. There's a motion.
Yeah, so there is an amendment to this, so to add the definition of staff. So is that good or bad? And then we can talk about the other things after we've accepted it or not accepted it. Okay, so I know you guys had a few hands up, but any other comments for clarity if we should add staff or not?
Just ask administration, looking at these policies, many of them define council within them, separate from staff. So within this policy, is council included in that staff definition or not?
Your Worship, again, this is partly, as it's written, no, it wouldn't be included in this particular policy. This is the policy for, I believe, the employees, so to speak. But Your Worship, I would just add further to that, that's part of the challenge. And even I know when we reviewed this with the staff, as it relates to the council code of conduct, how does that come into play? How do you define, I mean, if you're issued a T4, are you technically an employee, so on and so forth. So there's a bit of a, I don't know how else to put it other than to say a bit of an awkwardness from time to time when it comes to some of these, and where does council fit exactly? I think on this one, we're interpreting that this applies to staff, and as identified.
I'm going to follow up on that, Your Worship. Thank you. In this policy, it's page 40 of our package, it's 5.0 standards. The first line is, council and management supports participation in the program by all employees and will provide necessary resources to ensure proper equipment, training, and controls are in place to continue to improve safety measures. If we're expecting all of the employees to participate in this program, why would council themselves not participate in this program? Understandably, our role and how this applies to us may be minimal. I do, though, feel there is a component. And so that's why I was asking in respect to the definition of staff, if council was included in that overarching definition, which again, maybe provides to the fact that there isn't clarity in the definitions that are placed in there. I do think, though, that it's a miss that if we're supporting participation in the program by all employees, that we ourselves would not participate in the policy.
That's a good comment. Any feedback from the
Your
administration?
Worship, if I may, and I'm trying to appreciate the perspective of council here, but to be open, I mean, this is basically a policy that says we are committed to health and safety. That's the engagement, and include council. Yeah, we can do that. We can change definitions of staff, but that's the general policy that we're asking council to adopt right now, is to confirm and affirm the intent that OHS safety and the safety of staff is important. That's what we're really asking to do here. So, Your Worship, there's a definition in front and so on, and we can answer questions, but that's, this is not the detailed version of what's going to transpire starting tomorrow and so on and so forth. It's just the overarching statement, Your Worship.
Okay. Councilor Fletcher.
So just for clarification, staff and employee. An employee is a individual that is of non-executive level, where a staff member traditionally is a member of the executive team. So if we're talking about both aspects of employee and staff here, I think the word employee and staff need to be somewhat in that same term. And I'm just looking through the definitions that are provided online. That goes, a staff member is somebody that's at the executive level, right?
Okay, so with that comment, are you proposing an amendment that says staff and employees?
Is that not what we're asking now? Is it
Right
not?
now it's just staff because it's only referred to on the scope as protects our staff.
Okay, well then I would propose an amendment to that to add employee.
I don't know. Councillor Matthews, would you like to take that as a friendly so I don't have to stick handling? Okay, so if they add staff and employees, if this thing passes, then the scope needs to change to say staff and employees as well. Councillor Lloyd?
Yes, Your Worship. Getting back to the original motion, and now we have an amended motion accepted friendly. I was under the impression that we were going to define the word staff. In the comments that I heard from the general manager, or from the CAO, and I'm going to refer back to page 39 of 97, it says our staff, contractors, and then we don't define property, we don't define members of the public, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a little bit confused on that as to what we're defining and what is that definition when we say staff and employee, or is it necessary? There's a presumption here that we all understand these words. in my opinion.
Okay. That's a good comment. But however, sometimes assumptions are misinterpreted. So
With that, you're,
to me, I do not have a problem with having these definitions, but you do raise a good point. What do we classify as property? And then what do we classify as members of the public? Councilor Maddings?
Now that I understand the intent of the bylaw, which was just to represent the commitment of this organization to health and safety, then I'm not sure we need a single definition in there outside of saying staff, employees, contractors, volunteers, property members, whatever. And I mean, it's a general description of health and safety. Can you please comment on that? Do we need any definition?
Your worship, through to Councillor Matties. I mean, yeah, I would agree. We could remove the definitions and the policy would still stand. Because I think that is the goal of it. We're just trying to say that safety is important to the town and this is our commitment and we'll put towards the resources that it requires.
Okay, that's a good question. Do you want to follow up with anything with that?
I would like to amend my motion if I could. Can I do an amendment?
What would you like to do?
Pardon me?
What would you like to do?
I would like to remove the definitions from this policy. Right. What's the point? What's the point? When does it end, right?
That is true. Okay. So let me just stick handle this and think this through first. So
Do we need contractor and?
okay, so you like to change your motion to that town councils remove 3.0 definitions from the policy. Okay. Would you like to add the word employees to 2.0 for the scope?
Yes.
Your worship, I may have misspoke. Our OHS coordinator is confirming that it's best to have these definitions within the policy.
Okay. Thank you for that comment then. So, Councilor Matthews, back to you now because you made the first original motion to amend this. Would you just be happy to add to our staff and employees
Yes, that would be exactly right. Good.
on 2.0 under scope to add the word and staff after employees? Okay. Thank you, Administration. Thank you, Councilor Matties. Okay, members of council, any objections to adding the word and employees to number 2 scope? Councilor Bennett. Go ahead, Councilor.
I just don't see that it's necessary. I think that we accept it the way that the recommendation is. I don't understand why we need to go through this. That's all.
Okay, any more comments before I call the question? Okay, so the question on the amendment is to add the word and employees under 2.0 scope. Okay, so if we can delete that. Okay, thank you very much. Members of council, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Well, that's carried 4-3. Okay, back to the entire original motion by Councillor Bennett of accepting this and then repealing the workplace violence and bullying. Any questions or comments regarding that? Councillor Fletcher, you already asked the question about 3 years. Councillor Meyer, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through you to our CAO. Just reading the 4.0 statement stating all very honorable and upstanding kind of thoughts. So my question, Tom, sorry, through you to administration, can we ensure, is it practical to ensure all these things? Do you think we can like, I'm asking, can you ensure these things? Should we maybe say we strive to, by saying ensure, do we set ourselves up for failure?
Your worship, our OHS coordinator has just informed that there is a legislative requirement that the word "that ensures" is included. So I'll leave that part up there, but I will make a few other comments though. And again, the wording too, we understand that creating, enabling, and then so on and so forth is a fundamental value we share. So, I mean, part of the way it's worded is, it's saying that we share that value. We believe this is important. We believe this is what we would work towards, strive towards, so on and so forth. So kind of two things there, as I understand, the word ensure is a requirement through the OHS legislation, and it's an intent statement as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I guess not, so I'll ask some questions. On page 39, I would guess that the effective date would be changed from February 11th to February 25th, 2019, because of that. And then I just have a question regarding last revision date, why that would list June 22nd, 2015, and not today's date. I see July 3rd, 2012 has been stricken out, but then June 22nd was added.
Your worship, it'll be updated upon finalization. I'm guessing that was the last review of the CHS 014, but we can update once council approves this version.
Okay. So may I just make a suggestion in the future when we bring updated policies that we use the most recent one and not a copy of an originally changed one? Because if it was updated June 22nd, 2015, then that one should be here and not the July 3rd, 2012 one.
Noted, your worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, any more questions, comments from members of council?
Just
Councillor Meyer?
So if the wording, sorry, thank you, Your Honor, or Your Worship, through you to administration. If the wording is mandated by OH&S and we have to follow OH&S, why do we need to approve this? Wouldn't it just be like a foregone thing?
Your worship, maybe clarification from some of the staff here, but I believe this is just another part of the requirement, both for, I believe, the legislation, but also for part of our audits and our safety audit processes and whatnot. So, and, I mean, notwithstanding those two potential requirements, this is the example of council providing the leadership from the top, so to speak, to say this is important, and then so it's a leadership thing as well, your worship.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Okay. See none, we'll go back to the motion that was made by Councillor Bennett is to approve, and that will be as amended, and not as presented. So. Okay. Thank you. Members of council, any last comments? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to 9.3. Councillor Meyer.
Oh, I get a long one. Thank you, Your Worship. I make the motion that Town Council direct administration to cooperate with other Alberta municipalities, AUMA producers and recyclers of packaging and paper products, and the province of Alberta to develop a baseline that can inform the design of a provincial EPR program by researching A, the benefits, challenges, and risks of the EPR program in Alberta for these groups and their constituents, and B, the current recycling systems and supply chains across the province and potential impacts of an EPR program in Alberta.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Meyer. And as Council recalls, we passed a similar motion to support the City of Calgary's resolution to AUMA for EPR. And that has gone through unanimously at the previous AUMA. And now this is our organization, so our Alberta Municipalities Association, pushing forward to the province to make sure that we get this so that saves dollars to our residents. Administration, a presentation.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Choi. My name is Chelsea Rudolph. I'm the planning intern at the town of Stony Plain, and I am here to present this report to support this item, Agenda 9.3. Extended producer responsibility is an environmental policy approach where producers are responsible for their products through the post-consumer stage of a product's lifestyle. EPR shifts financial responsibility from municipalities and taxpayers to producers so they generate products that are readily reusable, recyclable, to reduce waste from their products and packaging. In 2009, the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment approved a Canada-wide action plan for EPR. Since then, EPR programs have been established across the province. However, no legislative programs have been established yet in Alberta. In March 2018, the City of Calgary sponsored a member request for decision at AUMA to support EPR, and this request for direction received unanimous support from municipalities in attendance, as well as a letter of support from the town of Stony Plain, which Mayor Choi just mentioned. Recently, the City of Calgary has asked other Alberta municipalities to help develop a baseline study to collect data and information to assist with the design of a provincial EPR program. Other municipalities across Alberta have chosen to support this initiative, including some of those in the Edmonton region. The cost of this study will be approximately $150,000 with some identified funding partners already. At this time, no funding request is being made of the town of Stony Plain. If Council supports this initiative, administration will provide supplementary data when requested and attend meetings to help develop the study components. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Members of Council, I'll open up for questions and comments. Councilor Matties.
Your Worship, I just want to comment with regards to extended producer responsibility. Across the country, there's examples, for example, in British Columbia, where a very successful program is in place that is ensuring that there is a provincial framework that provides for the proper recycling of products. In terms of the benefits to all communities, first of all, we would be able to better collaborate interprovincially with, for example, BC and Saskatchewan to create economies of scale and reduce costs for recycling. Secondly, job creation at every step of the recycling process, so through the collecting, transporting, and processing. We need, of course, people and equipment, whether we're recycling tire scraps, electronics, paint, oil, paper, packaging materials, etc. So this is just another layer on two existing programs that are in place, and it's the paper and packaging component of it. So I strongly support this initiative to get the baseline so that we can formulate a framework for Alberta.
Thank you, Councilor Matties. Any other comments, questions? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. That's carried. Move on to 9.4, electronic billing. Councilor Pletchko, please.
Yes, thank you, Worship. The Town Council accept the electronic utility billing report for information.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mayor Choi, through to Council. This is an initiative to try and reduce the costs for the utility billings, which affect our water, sewer, and garbage costs currently. We have a strong compliance already without doing a lot of advertising or encouraging people to sign up for it. And this would, recently there was an initiative presented by the City of St. Albert that proposed that people had to pay cost recovery if they wanted to bill in a paper form. So we've presented two options here. We would like you to consider that because of all of the changes that have been made with the water and sewer bills, that we don't make any further changes until January 1st, 2020, to give people time enough to sign up for it, and if you choose to go with the cost recovery.
Thank you. Members of council, if you've read the background information, it is there. The annual cost to the municipality is about $70,000. So, members of council, open the floor for questions, comments, and etc. Councilor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has given me lots to think about, mostly because I know lots of people who don't have computers or do not feel comfortable with online billing. I just don't think it's right that we should penalize people who don't have a computer or who don't feel comfortable with online billing. I guess I'll leave it at that and hear what the rest of my colleagues have to say.
Thank you. Councilor Lordy?
Thank you, Your Worship. In reference to a word that was just used by Councillor Bennett, penalize, I would tend to disagree with that statement. This has been a practice that's been in place by many different companies, many different industries and service providers out there, that the provision of a paper bill is charged, and it is based on cost of business, but it is also based on environmental responsibilities and so on and so forth. I do, though, have a question for administration, somewhat along the same lines, as to wondering how many, if they have any type of statistics as to how many homes within the town of Stony Plain do have the required electronic access to receive this bill. Understanding that there are still public means like our library and so on and so forth, I am aware of many seniors within our community that simply don't have internet access in their homes. They don't even own a computer. And so I'm curious, I know it's a hard stat and the information would be very hard to get. I'm curious if we have an idea or a number of how many residents could we be looking at that don't have the provision to receive an electronic bill within their home?
Mayor Choi, through to Councillor Laurie. At this time, we don't have that information, and I don't know how we would be able to obtain it.
So can I follow up on that, Your Worship? Thank you. With this program then, would there be a potential to waive that fee if a resident was able to prove that they did not have the appropriate access within their home?
Mayor Choi, through to Councillor Laurie. Certainly that would be council's consideration. We're just proposing two options, and however you wanted to define either option would be council's discretion.
Councilor Mattis?
I'm wondering if administration has considered a system that incents the behavior that we want to have, as opposed to penalizing behavior that we don't want to have. So in this example, if we could maybe reduce the cost for those that are submitting electronically to get more people to actually do it, that way we would not be penalizing the many seniors. And I know 100% for certain, my mom, even though she has a computer and she uses for email, would be scared to death to do this, and I know several other people. So I would rather incent the behavior that I want, hoping that maybe we get 50% or 70% of our population, and by maybe reducing their bill by 50 cents a month or something like that to compensate for the others. Is that something we could consider?
Mayor Choi, through to Councillor Mattis, I think that any strong movement towards receiving your bills electronically reduces the cost for everybody. So there wouldn't need to be 70,000 budgeted for those costs. It could be reduced down to possibly 20,000. And so that has an effect for everybody, including the people that are still receiving the paper bill.
Sorry, so you're saying to penalize people through charging them, and you're saying what?
No, I'm not saying to penalize anybody. I'm saying that any reduction that we have in the amount of paper bills that we mail out,
Okay.
everybody wins.
Okay, good. So then you're agreeing with what I said, that by incenting people through a
That's
reduction in their,
why we
okay,
presented two options. One is which is simply an example of what the city of St. Albert did, and the other one is just to increase our promotion so that we encourage people to use the electronic billing themselves, thus reducing costs for everybody.
Comments, Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to refer to the $70,000 indirectly. Today, that is recovered by how?
That is, Mayor Choi through to Councillor Plechko, that is a cost that's absorbed by the utility ratepayer. It's part of what you pay for in your billing.
So if you chose to not no longer get a bill in the mail, but you were to choose to have that done electronically, the cost saving to that individual would be what?
Currently, we don't have a system in place except that we can, where it directly affects one individual. We're proposing that if we can encourage the overall users to reduce that paper consumption, then we can reduce that cost for everybody.
Councilor Lowry?
Thank you, Your Worship. Two questions for administration. The first is along the same lines. So we have that approximately $70,000. Do you have an approximate number of utility customers that we currently have that we're currently sending bills to?
Mayor Choi through to Councillor Lowry, currently 28.7% use electronic billing.
What's the total number of utility customers, sorry?
Okay, so there's
6,190.
So we're looking at approximately $10 per year per user that is charged to produce a paper bill.
Yeah,
Correct.
$6 or $7.
My second question then refers to option 1 that's placed before us here on page 52. The remaining status quo with billing and a more active public awareness campaign of electronic billing. The goal is to increase electronic billing voluntarily, and most of the public awareness would focus around social media, as these users are likely the easiest to convert to electronic billing. To me, that's a fantastic initiative that I'm curious why we would wait until January 1st of 2020 to do so. If we're looking at this point in time to wait until January 1st of 2020 to institute any type of charges, changes, etc. on that aspect, I'm 100% okay with that. But if we have a period of time of approximately 9 months between now and then, why wouldn't we put together as much of an awareness campaign as we could right now to try and convert as many users as possible by January 1st, 2020, to potentially have an idea as to what the new normal, the new impact would look like for number of users receiving electronic versus paper?
Mayor Choi through to Councillor Lowry. I think with the two options presented, what we're saying is we would start the campaign like immediately for both situations. But if we were going to do cost recovery, we're requesting that that would not be effective until 2020.
Certainly, and I agree with that. It's not made very clear in here, but I think in order to make a decision on this, we have a great opportunity to collect some data and see what type of an uptick we could gain by doing certain awareness campaigns and putting that information out there. And we could potentially even almost solve this problem without having to make a decision on implementing something or not. If we can get 80% uptick just in a public awareness campaign, this might be something that's trivial, and we look at the end of the year saying, you know what, for the amount of users that we have that don't have electronic access, where we're at with current electronic billing, we're comfortable with, it stays status quo. So my hope with this going forward today is that we do put a stressor on that awareness campaign and have some good statistical data to come back to us as the next corporate plan to let us know where we sit with that.
Mayor Choi through to Councillor Lowry, that would be administration would be happy to follow that recommendation if council directs, because costs for everybody are what we try to keep down.
Councillor Lloyd, please. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. couple of questions here. Are there any other municipalities, I'll just say within Alberta, that have gone, electronic as opposed to the billing? And a part B to that, outside of municipalities or municipal governments, are there any other institutions, because they all bill some way, have gone 100% electronic? And I'm thinking banks, your bank statement, and people write checks. If you can just help me out on that a bit, please. Thank you, Your Worship. I may have a secondary question.
Mayor Choi through to Deputy Mayor Loy. There are more municipalities that are moving towards this. I don't have the statistics today. I could get them for you. And of course, with all of our utility bills that we have, I know a lot that I receive currently in my bank as well, that if I want a paper copy, I am paying an additional cost. And most of the initiatives are presented as a way to conserve trees and an environmental initiative.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just as a follow-up to that, I certainly agree, because it's just not only mailing out that bill, there's a lot of photocopying, there's ink, there's a whole gamut of things that go on with that. But currently, there are no municipalities that do 100% electronic billing.
For clarity, Your Worship, just on that, just to be clear, and then the manager can respond as well. It's, there's still an option for a paper billing, whether it's this what's being presented here tonight or TELUS or whomever, and then and I believe St. Albert as well. You can still get a paper bill. You're just paying extra. So it's not, they're not flipping a switch and making everybody do online or digital or whatever you want to call it. You can still get a paper bill if you're willing to pay for it, is how most of the systems work.
And given that, then, Your Worship, then I would be inclined to agree with that's the way society as a whole goes. I do like what Councillor Laurie has to say. If we have a small percent, like 8, 10, 12, whatever it happens to be, and they will be predominantly our seniors who do not have any electronic capability or just reluctant to do it, that we do find maybe it could be something that we could just say, okay, we'll pay that. But I'd like to know those numbers. Thank you very much, administration and Your Worship.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to refer to St. Albert specifically. They just passed a motion to go 100% paperless. And they will do that by July of this year. And they will move to still have a paper billing system, but the fee per bill will be $1.02 per bill. So anybody that has not chosen to move electronically will move to that aspect of it. So it is, at one of my last meetings that I was at, it was quite heavily talked about around the table that is something that lots of the municipalities are moving to. St. Albert over the next 10 years will save $1 million in administration costs. So I think it's quite important that as we move forward, we do keep in note that there is people that are less fortunate that just still don't have computers, that have no intentions of ever learning to use them. So we still have to make it convenient for everybody, but for the mass majority out there today, I think a lot of people are now going to a paperless system, which is that much better for the environment. So just a comment, thanks.
Councillor Bennett, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to just get really personal here for a minute. For years, I got a notice from the town about automatic withdrawal to pay my utility bills. And so I signed up for that right away. I've been doing that. And yet every month I get a bill. So, so my question is that because I didn't sign up for electronic billing? And so if I sign up for electronic billing, I will not receive a bill. It'll just, I'll just get an email kind of to say what I owe. In other words, Mr. Mayor, what I'm saying is that I'm pretty savvy when it comes to this computer stuff. And I didn't realize that. So this public awareness campaign of exactly what what we're trying to do is the number one first step here. It was never really explained to me. I kind of assumed that if they were automatically withdrawing it, I wouldn't see a bill, but I get a bill every month. So this clarifies it for me, and a campaign, a communications awareness campaign would certainly clear it up for a lot more people. So that's, I guess my question is, I won't see a bill anymore.
Mayor Choi, through to Councillor Bennett, we would never take a payment out of your account without sending you a bill to notify you of how much we were taking out. So you'll still receive a bill, but it'll be in a PDF and an email.
Okay, in email. Yeah, okay, yeah, got it.
Councilor Laurie?
Your Worship, to follow up Councillor Palechko's comments, and I will take a direct quote from the City of St. Albert, those residents who choose to continue to receive a paper bill yet have home internet access will be required to pay $1.02 per bill. So as I stated earlier, talking about a potential program as to where if a resident does not have the means within their home to access that bill, creating a provision where they would not be charged, I think would be an appropriate action for the town.
Okay, any other questions and comments? Councilor Matthews?
I realize this is for information, and so I do 100% support the public awareness campaign so that we can ensure that we're getting many more people on the electronic billing. But beyond that, if we are generating a lot of savings from this as the community, then I think we should be sharing that with our community. So in terms of, I still would love to see us reduce their overall costs, if that's the utility bill, for example. If we are reducing our overall cost by, let's say, $50,000, or maybe also for the seniors in our community, because we do have a lot of seniors that we are a little bit more, I guess, receptive of some of the unique needs of that group. And many of them, even if they had a computer at home, would not want to do this. And I think penalizing them by an extra $1.05, if we can maybe reduce the cost significantly through other means, would be good.
Okay, so with that, the cost of the $70,000 to issue and mail out everything is built into the rate of the water and the sewer and everything else. So in essence, if that gets reduced, then the rate that we charge our users will be reduced. So that's how they're getting rewarded for doing that, and vice versa. So if they choose not to, then that's still an additional cost to us for the fact that postage is going up, everything else, like the envelopes are going up. So in the meantime, if council accepts us for information and we choose to do a different strategy, there is two options for council to consider. So the first is we will accept the motion for information, then the council would have to make a motion to choose a direction or don't do nothing at all. So what is the preference of administration who would like us to finalize this, approve it, and then come back with a motion to see which direction?
Your Worship, just, we brought this forward. It was as much, it's, being presented for information. We were aware that it was a bit of a topic in St. Albert, as it was going through, and we knew there would be some discussion, conversation. So from myself, I think there are some, I guess a few comments about gathering more information or finding out more or looking towards the corporate plan moving forward, so on and so forth. So if I may, Your Worship, it's a receive for information. What I would take back from the conversation is that we would move forward with increased engagement, as the manager has noted. 28%, and we haven't really been pushing it out there, is pretty good. And if we can ramp that up a little bit and see where that number lands as we get a little bit closer to this fall, this winter, I think then would be a good decision point for council. We would come back at that point in time with some, clear options. You guys will have an opportunity to spend some time hearing from the community about it, so on and so forth. And that would be the next step in my perspective, Your Worship, or what I would take back if council was to just receive this for information and leave it at that. That's what I believe we would do.
Okay. Okay. With that, I was just doing some numbers here. So currently at 28% of the users in our community, which equates to 1,176 residents that are signed up for a monthly bill. That leaves just a little over 5,000 that are not. So, you know, if we base $5,000, $70,000 on that, that's just a little over $10, $15. So if our goal is to have more people onto the paperless billing, would it not make sense for the next few months here is to give them initiative to sign up? If we're going to save $70,000 over the course of a year, if everybody in the town of Stony Plain signed up for this, is there a way that we can give them initiative to sign up now till the end of the year? And then after that, then they get charged, because then they're paying for what they're using.
Your Worship, if I may, you know, I think to the mayor and to the rest of council, you know, I believe that's why we were just bringing this here for information with the kind of the options, just to, again, begin a discussion, begin a conversation, make sure you were aware, listen to what kind of thoughts you may have or questions you would have. And, you know, from here, we were again hoping we would either be coming out of this meeting with a couple of different things, either clear direction to start right now. And we will go, that's why, you know, as of January 2020. Unless council sees fit to make a motion and pass a motion to that. Again, my sense is that, you know, we can continue to promote it, push it out a bit more, see what happens and come back. I don't know if we're at a point, Your Worship, where we need to start moving too many numbers around. Like at this point in this particular meeting, if council sees that that's something you want to do, then we would probably do a bit more homework, come back again reasonably soon and take a look at it with you then.
Councilor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I tend to agree with your sentiments of an incentive program would be something great, but to administration's point as well, I think they're the best to tell us as to what that incentive program would look like. And if I can make a suggestion, being that we are approaching the third month, I'm proposing maybe we just let administration try to put the public campaign out there for the next 3 months and collect some stats and data and re-present to us in 3 months, showing what progress has been made with maybe a potential incentive option if they don't feel that the progress or the uptake is as much as we would like to see by that point in time, to try and get more users on board by the end of the year before we have to make a decision on implementing a fee.
Okay. That's a good comment. And again, that motion. Okay, so Councilor Pletchko, you have the motion on electronic billing and accepted for information, but I'm going to ask you to amend that and to add a date, if you can bring it back by the August council meeting. That will set the time frame for administrative staff to gather that information and do the campaign to push it out over the summer, and then coming back to see if there is a huge increase, and then from that point on, then I expect the administration to give us a few more options and then the two that I listed here. Okay, so the motion is has been changed to separate information and to bring back
Go with it further.
and bring up a follow-up report for the August 2019 council meeting. Okay. Members of council, are you guys okay with that? Yeah. Okay, Councilor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Does administration require council to vote on providing the direction to start a publicity campaign in respect to this, or is that something that administration can undertake without direction from council?
No, Your Worship, I don't believe it needs to be specifically noted.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, with that, any more questions, comments? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Yeah, that's carried. All right, it is 7:30, so let's call a quick recess and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Okay. I don't think we can hold it long. Our council chambers, back to our meeting. Going on to 9.5, Partners in Climate Protection. Deputy Mayor, please.
The partners,
Deputy Mayor.
oh,
Your worship, just to get through this meeting tonight, the town council accept the Partners for Climate Protection Milestone 5 update report for information.
Thank you very much. This is part of the Partners in Climate Change. We've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the 5th milestone. So go ahead, administration.
Your worship, I'll start this off and Ms. Rudolph will carry on when she arrives. As we discussed earlier in the year, that the 5-step Partners for Climate Protection framework was adopted by the town many years ago. Milestone 1 in 2007, which created a baseline emissions inventory and forecast. Milestone 2 set emissions reduction targets. That was completed in 2008. And in 2009, the town completed both milestone 3 and 4, which were develop a local action plan and implement the local action plan. Just for context, the greenhouse gas forecast was based on 2006 data and involved coming up with a forecast for 2016. So again, it's a few years old. In 2008, the reduction target was to try to get to 20% below 2000 limits by 2016. So that involved 19 corporate action plan items, which are established in milestone 3, and 16 community action items, which were also implemented or envisioned through milestone 3 and 4. So total of 35 items were included in part of the action plan. So milestone 5 is basically a commitment to understand how we've done towards reaching those targets and going through each of the actions and determining the baseline, where we sit with the baseline. The town has done a number of initiatives over the years that have we would hope would have been successfully lowered our greenhouse gases, but again, we don't have the data to show anything about that. I guess that's the lead off to this, and I'll pass it over to Ms. Rudolph to finish the presentation.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Council Mayor Choi. So yeah, the background for this, Partners for Climate Protection is a 5-step milestone framework to help increase community health by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So as mentioned, we've already completed milestones 1 through 4 and are kind of talking about the potential to complete milestone 5. So the 2018 to 2021 strategic plan identifies milestone 5 as a commitment to protect and manage our environmental impact by pursuing an integrated approach to expand our efforts and services. Milestone 5 is targeted for completion over the 4-year life of the strategic plan. The 2019 to 2021 corporate plan identifies the municipal development plan update to be completed in 2019. Administration recommends that the MDP update take place prior to completing milestone 5, as one of the 5 theme statements of the MDP is environmental responsibility. This will ensure environmental initiatives account for the town's priorities and governing policy framework. Administration is scheduled to complete the MDP update in 2019, followed by approval by the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board in 2020. This will provide a foundation to complete milestone 5 afterwards. A specific initiative for milestone 5 should be included in the next corporate plan to ensure completion of that initiative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members of the council, any questions and comments regarding that? I have a quick question then. Currently, we're dealing with our waste management supplier because of the change in recycling things that are accepted. How will that affect our baseline? Because when baseline was taken back in 2006 and 16, countries accepted more recycling products than they do now.
Your worship, so this the milestone project deals with greenhouse gas reduction targets and gas emissions. So I guess the town, from the town's perspective, the recycling is an environmental initiative that's underway. How it relates to milestone 5, I guess, would have to be further understood through the update in the project. I would speculate that recycling efforts have gone up over the years. How that relates to fewer gas emissions in vehicles, et cetera, I guess would have to be determined through data that we would try to undertake.
Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a comment. I think this is a very reasonable timeline and initiative to take. I'm glad to see that we are coming back to milestone 5. And with the information that we gathered all through the years 2006 and 2016, it seems like an opportune time now to update it after the MDP. So I'm pleased with this report.
Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Can administration provide me a little bit of clarity? Sorry, we heard the date of 2016. My understanding of the comments were 2016 was our target date, and that the last information that was collected would have been done in, I would presume, 2008, since these were completed in January of 2009. So can I get just a little bit of clarity? What has happened since 2009 aside from implementing? Have we done any type of monitoring progress, etc.?
I can speak a little bit to that. So through your worship to Councillor Laurie, as from my understanding, I don't think any specific monitoring progress has happened on the milestones specifically. The little background that I have gotten is that some of the internal roles and responsibilities of staff have shifted over the years, and that has kind of put milestone 5 has kind of pushed that to the side. So it's in the strategic plan as we will do it. We want to pursue this environmental initiative, but it hasn't been in any of the corporate plans say we will do this year and this is what's going to happen.
Okay. So thank you. So as a follow-up to that, the goals that were referred to by the general manager were to reduce to X point by 2016. Stating that between 2009 and 2016, for those 7 to 8 years, there should have been some specific monitoring and progress reporting, et cetera, to be completed for milestone 5. We are so far beyond January of 2009 and those previous targets that I'm wondering if doing milestone 5 is even worthwhile, because the data that we're going to start comparing it to was collected long ago, and our targets have not been maintained. We haven't maintained our progress and reporting, and so we even would start, in my opinion, to maybe work back at milestone 1 to develop a plan to figure out where we are again, because since 2009 it doesn't sound like we really know where we are, and I'm not sure that finding out where we are today constitutes monitoring progress. To me, it would be setting a new baseline. So I have a question to administration. Can you advise what cost is going to be associated with completing milestone 5?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Laurie. So the cost estimate to complete milestone 5, and I guess I will provide some context to some of your previous comments. So that, I mean, the milestone 5 would somewhat be a reinvention of the 1 through 4, and I'm looking at the data that we have available today as compared to obviously old data from before. So we would have to, that data is not readily available. We'd have to go find the data. We have to investigate, various things about the buildings and our fleet, et cetera. So there's quite a bit of background work there, which is somewhat of a, I guess, regurgitation of some of the previous work. But without going ahead and with milestone 5, which the cost of $20,000 and approximately 200 hours of work, that's the estimate we have. We really don't have an idea of how we've done over the last decade or so, and so The thought process administration had at this time was that the MDP being our biggest priority for this year, that would be our environmental focus for the year. We would use that as a building block with which to, I guess, bring the milestone project into further compliance and further understanding in the future corporate plans.
Follow up, Your Worship. Go ahead. Thank you. Through you to administration. So is this $20,000 cost that's going to be for work to be undertaken in 2019 to be placed into the 2020 MDP? Is that $20,000 already accounted for in the current 2019 corporate plan, or will this be coming back to council for a decision at spring adjustment?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, so we're not proposing the 20,000 at this time. We're proposing to delay this project till after the MDP is done and to have this come forward in 2020 or 2021, and that would be identified in the new corporate plan as a cost item, along with other items to determine, do we have the capacity to do it internally, would we have to go external, based on all the capacity items for the corporate plan.
Thank you. Any questions? So my question is, what if we don't do milestone 5? What does it actually get us?
Your Worship, I guess it further reinforces the things we could do or should be doing to reduce our greenhouse gases in the town. Some things may have been successful, some things may not have been. Some things we should be doing more of, some things we shouldn't. 35 items were identified, and some of them have worked, some of them haven't. Which ones should we do? Which ones should we enhance? I guess those are the types of questions I would expect Milestone 5 to answer and direct future initiatives or future programs that council may want to consider and fund or not.
Okay. Then I need to add a comment here. So if we're looking at 2020, 2021, which is a far cry from 2006, which is going to be used as the baseline under this climate partnership. Our staff has grown considerably since 2006. Even if the 35 initiatives were successful, would we actually see a reduction in greenhouse gases because of our growth in our staff and fleet levels? Because in 2006, I wasn't even on council yet, and I know we had a lot less employees than we do now. So if we're using that as a baseline based on the climate change partnership, then we're going to exceed that, we're going to fail. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our planning and infrastructure. Is there a way that we can see or measure a cost impact savings to the town through this greenhouse gas emissions? And I'll just leave that open at that.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Loy, I think all of the projects that come forward have business cases where cost savings in relation to carbon credits in relation to greenhouse gases, the things like our facilities, our buildings, the energy efficient lighting, all those things contribute to our overall picture and are analyzed as opportunities come available. So the purpose of the whole program was to have a plan about those things and to report back on it. Now, I think by evaluating the information, we can understand how to make the plan better going forward. That would be the intention of the project.
Thank you. And Your Worship, then a follow-up on that. $20,000 is a minuscule amount of money. If the potential is there to reduce our greenhouse gases as well as bring us some financial savings to the town, I would like to keep that into consideration.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mattis, please.
Worship, through to administration. I guess my question is that given that we have limited resources in terms of people as well as financial, do you feel there would be more value added working on something like this as opposed to focusing our efforts more on extended producer responsibility, getting that baseline done, because I think, based on what my understanding is and what my readings have been to date, is that there is a more significant possibility for an impact with regards to reducing what goes into landfill, which basically recycles our existing products, reduces existing use of products, etc. So could you comment on that as to where would we best place resources?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Matties. Yes, so that basically your comments are the reason why our recommendation is that we focus on the MDP this year. The other items which are underway is the recycling project to work with our citizens on changing behaviors in relation to plastic in particular, and the recycling changes in the region which we have to get involved in. Transit is a big thing that we're working on, which is an environmental program which would lower the community's greenhouse gas emissions. So we're trying to implement transit by next year. So that's taking up a lot of our time. Things like some of the Old Town community planning and the waste harmonization work which is underway in the region. So these are all environmental committees and sub-projects which are underway, which we feel are our highest priority, and that was the reason for our recommendation to continue with them this year and consider milestone 5 next year or thereafter.
Councillor Laurie?
When I look at the Partners for Climate Protection and I look in our area, so there's approximately 300 members Canada-wide through the provinces and territories. And as I look around our general region and I see who is sitting where, we've got Leduc has finished step 1, Beaumont 0, Devon 1, Parkland County 2, Stony Plain 4, Spruce Grove 5, St. Albert 4, Strathcona 0, Rimbey 0, Jasper 1, and City of Edmonton 5. So I see very few of the communities who initially bought in and have started in this all the way back to 2002, some of these municipalities are. It doesn't seem that this program has really gained a lot of traction, seen a lot of success, and shown a lot of progress. My concern when we look at this and we look at the proposal of putting this in our MDP and we look at the cost of approximately $20,000 is, are there other programs? Are there other initiatives? You mentioned yourself, this only addresses greenhouse gases. This doesn't necessarily address some of our recycling challenges and some of the other challenges we face. We talk a lot about our stormwater, all kinds of things and all kinds of management for our environment. I do have a concern with continuing down the path of this program and investing the amount of money that we're talking about investing when there does seem to be many other options out there, not only to achieve the same results, but expand that into a much broader scope than just greenhouse gases.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Laurie. And a quick check, there's just over 350 municipalities that are part of the climate change, Partners Climate Change through FCM, and then there's over 4,000 municipalities in Alberta, no, not Alberta, but in Canada. So the percentage is relatively low. Councillor Bennett?
What I liked about this report was that it's back on our radar. The reason that nothing has happened since 2009 is because we haven't completed milestone 5. So we haven't gotten the feedback that we invested with the first 4 milestones that we initially could have been using had milestone 5 been done in, say, even 2011. So I want it back on the radar. I want us to go back through that data and find out what we did and what we could do to, and milestone 5 is just that. It's a report on the data and what has been accomplished. The fact that we're already setting aside time to do our MDP and to do some of the environmental initiatives that our general manager talked about, I think is great. Let's go ahead, let's do those things. Those are things that are right in our face right now. But let's look at milestone 5. This is, like, it'll be in at least a year, 2 years, and get it back on, look at what we accomplished, look at in the area of, and for emissions, I mean, maybe the carbon tax even promoted us into greenhouse gas reduction. I like the fact that it's on our schedule. We're not going to let it drop. We're going to look back and see what we can do better and not let it sit for another 10 years.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. To follow up with Councillor Bennett's comments and some of my previous comments here, when you read through the Partners for Climate Protection program, it says we ask only that members do the following: move through the milestone framework within 10 years of joining, report on progress at least once every 2 years with our support. When I look at where we sit currently in this program, we're surpassed the 10 years from the initial launch of this program, and we have not reported, to my understanding, at all since completing milestone 4. So we have not fulfilled our obligations of this at all. And looking at the steps and looking at the milestones, I'm not actually sure that we could properly complete milestone 5, because I think our information would be so outdated that there would be, as you talked about, the growth we've seen in our community, the changes we've seen in our community. I don't think we would be able to come up with any tangible results from milestone 5. I think in order to do this properly, if we were to choose to go down this path, we would need to start this process over again. We would need to go back to milestone 1, begin to develop those baselines, because the baselines we have aren't accurate, because we haven't kept track of those baselines for a period of over 10 years. So they have changed, but we can't associate changes in those baselines with specific events. We know our staff has grown. If our emissions have grown, can we tie that to our staff? Do we know? We wouldn't. Because in that time frame, there's been such a lapse of data, we have nothing to pinpoint to say, well, this is a guarantee as to why this changed.
Okay. Thank you. Any more comments? Seeing none. So administration, if council approves this and the update, will this be built into our corporate plan for 2020?
Yeah, Your Worship, I believe that would be the intent at this point would be to, as it's outlined in the report, I believe was made reference to, we would focus on the MDP through this current calendar year. And as we approach the fall, there would be some effort put into developing an estimate or a time estimate cost, so on and so forth. Maybe a bit more work, I would assume, to just get a better understanding of what that effort would be, what it would include, what could we be expecting clearly from the final report, so on and so forth. That would be presented as part of the corporate plan, and council would see fit to debate it at that point in time, whether it would be an approved initiative in the corporate plan.
Okay. So members of council, so in the capital region, City of Leduc, Town of Beaumont, now the City of Beaumont, and also the County of Strathcona County, were 3 members that signed on and have done 0 milestones. The Town of Devon signed in as well and has done 1. As mentioned by Councilor Laurie, City of Spruce Grove and the City of Hampton has completed all 5. St. Albert has done 4 of the milestones. Stony Plain has done 4. Parkland County has done 2. Drayton Valley has done 1. And the next closest municipality is the town of Rimbey that has done 0. So it does ask the question of how valid or valuable completing the Partners of Climate Change is for a municipality. Okay, any more questions? Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not actually a question, but a motion. And I would move that Town Council direct administration to compile a report to present the viability to complete Milestone 5 versus new initiatives or opportunities for climate impact limitation for the town of Stony Plain.
Okay, that's not accepted because we have a motion on the floor right now that says this. So we can alter it, or we can accept this and then make another motion to come back.
Can I make a, okay, right, this is just accept for
This is just for information because you can't change the entire motion like that. Okay, so that's where we want to go. Deputy Mayor, any comments? Okay. So I'll call the question to accept the information that was presented by administration on Partners of Climate Change Milestone 5. All in favor? Opposed? Then we accept it for information. Okay. With that, you mentioned that you want to make a motion, and
Yes, Your Worship.
I will do that because it comes from our business items.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Town Council direct administration to bring Council a report on the viability of completing Milestone 5 versus new initiatives or opportunities for climate impact limitation to be included in the 2020 corporate plan for the town of Stony Plain.
Okay. Does the administration need a minute to write that down? Okay, let's go ahead and start.
Thank you, Your Worship. As we've discussed and as we've discovered through the report that was presented and accepted for information and our investigation into the work for the Partners of Climate Protection, it would seem that not only is the town of Stony Plain fallen significantly behind in this program to the point where its results and its comparables are probably no longer relevant, it also seems that the proposal in front of us for climate protection only deals with greenhouse gases, when at this time we know that our environmental impact spreads far and wide beyond that. When we look at the significant number of hours and the significant cost to complete Milestone 5, I feel that administration's time and our taxpayers' dollars can be better used to broaden the scope of a project and find potentially other opportunities that are much more viable and can be completed in a much shorter time frame than the current Partners for Climate Protection.
Thank you. Members of Council, open the floor for questions, comments, and discussion. Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm wondering, and I'll ask the mover, is this report on the viability something that you're expecting to come forward fairly soon? Reason I ask that is because our town manager stated that it would be coming forward in the next corporate plan, at which time I would think that the viability of completing Milestone 5 would be part of that report into our corporate plan. So I'm not seeing exactly why we need another report, and especially one if the mover is anticipating that report to be fairly soon. Again, it'll take the time that our staff has indicated they need for the MDP and for some of our other initiatives. So that's the question I have, I guess, for the mover.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, through to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bennett. Through your worship to Councillor Bennett, I do not expect or anticipate this report to come back to Council anytime soon. I would actually expect this report to be a part of the MDP and the corporate plan for 2020. My intention behind this is to not limit administration to strictly looking at the Partners for Climate Protection as our only avenue moving forward in our environmental segment under the MDP and under the corporate plan for 2020. With the way that this information report has come forward and the way that this information has looked, essentially we are stating that aside from some other specific initiatives that we've talked about, this is our direction. What I'd like to do is I would like to give administration the open option to look at the viability of using this avenue, which could be the presented recommendation by administration that we complete milestone 5, but it does also then open it up to them to allow them to start considering alternative programs and processes that may be in place that may be better suited for the town of Stony Plain in the long run to help us achieve the goals of our NDP and our environmental pillar.
Councillor Matthews?
First of all, the full motion isn't up there, but if it could be amended to the 2020 and also just indicate versus environmental protection initiatives. If that could be friendly.
Sorry, say the amendment one more time.
So basically versus environmental, initiatives or environmental protection initiatives by, for the plan in 2020. You had already talked about the timeline. It's just a matter of just refining versus initiatives. There should be versus environmental limiting or environmental.
Yeah, and that wasn't my initial motion. So it was the viability of completing milestone 5 versus new initiatives for climate impact limitation.
Sure. By.
And yes, I believe I did request the by or for the
corporate
2020 corporate plan.
Okay, perfect.
So which would be November of 2019.
Then I would be supporting that motion.
Any other questions, comments?
Your Worship, if I just made a couple of comments, or I guess just for clarification and for understanding. So, just going with the wording of the motion, I believe I appreciate what's being put forward. That coupled with some explanation by the mover, I think I also appreciate that or understand that. So I just want to paraphrase or so that we're off on the right track here. So we had indicated that milestone 5 would be brought back as an initiative. I believe the mover is indicating that administration not limit their environmental initiatives potentially to that particular program, so that if there's other programs, initiatives, so on and so forth, that those receive due consideration and be brought to council's attention, or at minimum referenced in that milestone 5 initiative, that as options or different processes or so on and so forth. And I'll just leave it at that, Your Worship, to see if that's the understanding, and if we're on the same understanding, then good.
Okay. I think my understanding from the mover and the explanation on this is that, yes, when we do the 2020 corporate plan deliberations in November, is to have this as line item, but as mentioned by the general manager, that he predicts that it's going to cost us $20,000 and approximately 200 staff hours to complete milestone 5. So with $20,000 and 200 hours of staff time, what are other initiatives that we can do with that money to have a different environmental impact? Because this only looks at greenhouse gases. What about the other environmental pillars that we could look at for that dollars?
Your Worship, just Your Worship, for further clarity or further discussion, I guess whatever you want to call it, would be, I believe in about 4 weeks, council will get its opportunity to, I guess, adopt and approve a new strategic plan. As council is well aware, part of the council retreat did, I guess I would choose my words here, but tended to put more of an emphasis on environmental initiatives was the direction we felt we had received at that point in time. So that, I believe, is reflected in the strategic plan. And again, just going back to sort of high-level process there, so that that'll be in front of council for consideration. We take our direction from that document, and we try to craft initiatives to suit that broader direction, schedule them in, sequence them in, so on and so forth, and that ultimately council has the authority to approve the corporate plan later in the fall. So I think the motion itself, if we're just generally on that same page, feeds into the broader direction provided previously, which will be, I would assume, to be affirmed in March on the strategic plan, and then we'll go forward from there, Your Worship.
Okay. Councilor Laurie, does that ring a bell?
Thank you, Your Worship. It is yes, and I will just add one comment from your comments of the understanding. I do not wish to limit our initiatives to $20,000 or 200 man-hours. What I am looking for is a comparable. We may find an alternative program that might be $30,000 and 300 hours, but its impacts, its assessments, and its overall value is significantly larger than our Partners for Climate Protection. What I'm looking for is administration to ensure that they are looking at all options and presenting good, viable options with reasonable results to council for consideration of adoption in the 2020 corporate plan.
Thank you. Councilor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. A question through you to the mover, if that is how it's done. I'm just reading, and and the second half of your says versus new initiatives for climate impact limitations. Now, when you say, like, is that like we would like to find new ways to limit our greenhouse gases, or are we talking how we'd like to limit the impact of climate change on our residents? Like, how would they navigate a changing world? Or is it like we're just going to try to limit greenhouse gases?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Meyer, I think we would certainly look at programs that would encompass either side of that conversation. I think we need to ensure we are doing everything within our power to limit our impact on our climate, but we also need to ensure that we ourselves as the town and our residents are adapting to whatever climate change is occurring at that point in time. So I would think that whatever initiatives may come out, and my intention behind this is to remove the limitation of strictly staying within the Partners for Climate Protection program, is to allow administration to find programs that would bring value to the town and the residents of the town that would fall underneath our environmental pillar within our strategic plan.
Thank you. Councilor Matties?
Clarification, the word new means it's some new initiative. It could be any initiative. Can we just say other initiative or other?
I would be okay with that, yes.
Councilor Pleshko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through to the mover. I struggle with this. I struggle with what we're talking about. We're talking about something that's 10 years old, that obviously past council has lost direction from. There was no timelines put on it, and we're talking about starting something all over again. In our strategic planning in the past, just recently, we talked about new environmental ways of doing things, which will come out in our strategic plan. Why are we doubling? I see this as a double up of something that we're going to see from administration already for new ways to move forward with climate, the impacts, the limitations of what it is, with one more motion when something that is going to come out of the new strategic plan that we talked about just recently. So I really struggle with what you're talking about. It's a 10-year-old plan. Most other places have let it go. We did a great job. I'll give past council great, and administration. They did four of them, but they forgot the fifth one. And overall, I think if you can help me to understand this just a tiny bit better, why we should be doubling up on something that we were very clear in our strategic planning, I may be persuaded to consider it, but at this point in time, I think this is really a double up of something that we don't really need. And we're wasting a lot of time on something that we've got administration already on the move for.
Thank you, Councillor Plechko, and through Your Worship to you. I would actually look at this on the opposite side of that spectrum, and my intentional motion is the opposite side of the spectrum. As we read through the information item that was presented to us, it's very clear in the information item that milestone 5 was going to be included and brought back in the corporate plan, at which point in time we most certainly could have debated it. It may or may not survive that. What I'm actually looking at is, rather than doubling up, the intent of this motion is to allow administration to do exactly what you just stated and exactly what we talked about in our strategic plan. The report that's been presented to us here specifically states that it will be included in the MDP and the strategic, and the corporate plan as the Partners for Climate Protection Milestone 5. My intention of this motion is to, exactly as you said, allow a potentially old and unviable program to have seen its day, be appreciated for what it brought us, but allow administration to move forward to new initiatives without potentially having to include this in there. I think this allows administration to do exactly what we've directed in our strategic plan and gives them the option. That is how I feel in this motion. Not saying that if this did come to us for our corporate planning in November, we could very well remove it at that point in time. My concern would be that even though it is in our strategic plan, we may not see as many other initiatives come forward because of potential cost implications. Because this would be included in there for sure from what I'm gathering from this information report. So having this motion, I feel, and the intention is to allow administration to consider dropping this from the 2020 corporate plan and simply stating this is not viable and we have found a new program that we feel is better invested for the town of Stony Plain, rather than saying here's an item you told us has to be in here and maybe not presenting us with another option because we had left the information or accepted for information a report that stated this would come back to us as is.
Go ahead. Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So a bit of a follow-up question then, because at our strategic planning, this was brought up by one individual that felt that it should be somewhere along the way brought back in. And again, I'm still struggling with what you're saying because administration obviously did not see a need for this program to bring it forward. It sat vacant for 10 years, and we were clear again in our, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in our strategic planning to move to new environmental initiatives. So again, we're still talking about the same thing that they've already been instructed to. We're just making one more motion for them to kind of carry on.
Okay. I think there's a lot of moving parts there. So understanding that environmental responsibility is a pillar in our strategic plan, and we want to continue to focus on that. And that means more ways than one, not just greenhouse gases, but also recycling, our waste streams, and even how we develop in our communities. I think the question right here is that, do we continue with milestone 5 or not? It's probably the better discussion and debate that we have. Because if we just defer this back to our corporate plan in November, then we're having the same discussion and debate again, versus do we do milestone 5 or another initiatives that they have already, staff are already looking into, because that is a direction of council. So when I look at all the municipalities in Alberta, there's 352 municipalities in Alberta, and only 23 have actually signed up to do the FCM's milestones. Only 3 have completed them. 3. So there are more people that signed up that didn't do nothing than that signed up that completed them. And the fact that we did 4 is great. Do we need to do milestone 5? I don't know. At the time, Mayor Lemke may have decided with staff and members of council saying that maybe step 5 was not warranted for the value that we get back for the dollars that we spend. Maybe it is. But it is absolutely long overdue to either say yes or no to this, because the baseline is 2006. And if we don't look at this until 2020 to do the work, we're already 14 years out of this. And as I've mentioned many times, our staff, our fleet, and everything else has grown. Our facilities has grown. So the amount of greenhouse gases that we output now will and should far exceed the greenhouse gases that we put out in 2006. So we've just wasted our time debating this. We might waste our $20,000 and man hours to move forward. So again, only 6% of Alberta's municipalities actually chose to sign on, and only 3 have completed it. Majority of them has not started at all. So I think the discussion should be, this all gets removed, is that yes or no, Councillor Lowry, do we continue with milestone 5? Would be more appropriate. I'll leave that to you, but I will not vote in favor of this because, again, I'll side with Councilor Fletchko as we are already moving forward as a council on other initiatives that can lessen our environmental impact.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do you have a proposed amendment wording for the motion?
Yes. I ask you that you withdraw this and then you make a motion to not include milestone 5 in the 2020 corporate plan and just leave it at that, because as what we accepted for information, it does say that administration is going to put that in there. And I believe if through our direction to administration of looking at initiatives to reduce our climate impact, if they come back to us and say milestone 5 is the way to go, then milestone 5 is the way to go. But we don't need to direct that.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. I will rescind this motion and I will ask that you make the additional motion you spoke to.
Okay. With that, then I have to actually give up the chair. Deputy Mayor, you have the chair.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I make a motion that Town Council directs administration not to complete milestone 5 of the Partners in Climate Change.
Thank you. We'll wait till that gets up on the screen. Would you like to, excuse me,
Speak to that, yes.
it's not up on the screen yet, Your Worship. Okay. You'd like to further comment on that?
Yes. So thank you, Mr. Chair. As the conversations has evolved around this table, the FCM Climate and Partner Change has been a long program that was established way back in the 90s. Town Stony Plain signed on in the early 2000s. Our baseline is 2006, which is then 14 years out from what we're doing now. So much has changed. There's so many other initiatives and programs that we can do as a municipality that can reduce our greenhouse emissions, reduce our waste that we send to the landfills. We do not need to continue with milestone 5.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So my comments are that with the discussion we had at strategic planning and the discussion we've had tonight, my main objective of at least getting this on the table and discussing it and moving forward with environmental initiatives in a more forward-moving realm have been accomplished. It was years that we did not talk about this, about milestone 5. We have made some, and some really good environmental initiatives going forward. Our waste management is was top-notch up until a few years ago when things changed. But this topic has not been talked about for a long time. It is now, it has been discussed. We brought it forward at strategic planning. We've had a thorough discussion now. I would fully support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Any other comments? Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would agree with Councillor Bennett's statements. This has been brought forward. This has been talked about. We have created a conversation, quite frankly, that hasn't happened in many years. And administration, as Councillor Palechko noted, has direction through our strategic plan to ensure that environmental is one of the key areas of consideration for the town of Stony Plain moving forward. I think this program was a good program in the days that it was developed. It was a good program in the initial phases of 2007, 8, and 9 for the town of Stony Plain to understand where we sat and what initiatives we could do. It's my understanding that many initiatives were put in place. We just dropped the ball on milestone 5 and we didn't end up doing some reporting and some data gathering afterwards to see what impact those actual initiatives have. I have the true belief that those initiatives probably did have a very positive impact and they have led us to the direction as to where we are today. And I do think we now can close the door on this initiative and open the door to new initiatives and start moving forward to help continue to improve the environment for the residents of the town of Stony Plain and for the globe in general. So thank you very much for putting this motion forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Mayor, would you like to conclude?
Yes, just, Mr. Chair, for the motion is not to remove, is to not to complete. So is to not complete milestone 5.
Does that sit well with the rest of the members of council? Any discussion on that? Seeing that there's no more discussion, I'm going to call a question. All in favor? That's carried. Mr.
Thank you, Deputy. Moving on, let's go to 9.6, the 2018 fourth quarter report. Go ahead, administration.
Your worship, just generally, again, the fourth quarter report is in front of you. Quite a bit of information included within it. It does have a bit of a new look this particular time around. Again, lots of information. I believe it gets better every time we bring it in front of council. Certainly want to thank, there's a lot of staff effort that goes into this, compiling the information, getting it there. And your worship, final comment before I just turn it over, open it for any questions or thoughts from council. We do also tend to view this one as a update report to the community on just general operations. There's a lot of information in it when it relates to numbers and attendance and so on and so forth. And we do tend to get it out into the public as much as we can. And hopefully that provides some insight to the operations of the town, to the general public. So, your worship, I'll leave it at that and certainly able to answer any questions or that council may have.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is a very large document, so members of council, if you've had a chance to go through it, any questions or comments regarding some of the programs and stuff that we've done and completed in the fourth quarter, and hopefully ask some questions moving forward. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, your worship. Referring to page 73 of the package for provincial statutes enforcement, through you to administration, I've noticed as these reports come through to council that distracted driving tends to be the #1 most enforced infraction that we see in the town of Stony Plain. And I've looked at comparable communities. I also sit on the Community Police Advisory Commission, and this is something that is noted elsewhere. I'm curious if administration can give us any examples or any information on any specific events that we may be doing, any specific community information, and if they are considering looking at some potential future changes in respect to the penalties through the municipal bylaw in relation to distracted driving.
Okay, go ahead.
Your worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So distracted driving is actually a provincial statute, so it's not a municipal bylaw, and that's something that we have zero control over. It's part of the Traffic Safety Act. And our officers, it doesn't take much for us to find someone distracted driving on a daily basis in our community. There are some communities that do have very high powerful cameras, and they sit in certain locations and they'll actually take a picture of you on your phone and distract it and pull you over and provide a violation. So it's certainly something that's on the rise in Alberta, and there's certainly several examples across the country of which distracted driving causes some great damage. So it's certainly something that our officers pay attention to.
Thank you, and apologies on the confusion as to where that laid. As a follow-up through your worship, with this being so prevalent, is there anything else at this time that we are considering? I understand there are other options and there are other things that are being done, but as you mentioned, it virtually takes no effort for one of our enforcement officers to find somebody distracted while driving. Is this something that we are going to put a focus on within our community, and are we considering doing more about this in our community?
Your worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So we do belong to a regional traffic safety group that certainly puts information out into all of our communities. We do conduct the DARE program in the schools, and we do talk to the students related to this type of activity. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much we put out and how much information goes out across, not just from ourselves, but from others. Folks that need their cell phone will utilize their cell phone, and they will continue to utilize their cell phone even regardless of getting a violation. So it's something that we typically go out, we do some education. there might be a ton of files here that they don't give a violation on the first incident. They may talk to an individual, and if they catch them multiple times, that's when the violation is issued. So I do believe our officers do a fair amount of public education related to violations and those types of things, and give a little bit more leeway to folks from time to time.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I refer to page 82 of our package, mostly because I don't know where else it should go. But my question is, I noticed that in this discussion of our Christmas light up and how much work our team has done there, the facility operations team, that there was no mention of the celebration of the decoration at Rotary Park. There was an initial celebration of the opening of those beautiful lights. And in fact, page 84, I believe that's the picture, and I could be wrong, but that looks like the picture of that night. Now, it was not an overwhelming success. We didn't have a whole lot of people there that night, but I'm certainly hopeful because of the work that our Rotary Park, that our team did to put together the lights and to make it such a Christmas festival place, that they will continue to do that celebration and not be discouraged because the first one did not attract very many people. So I guess that's my question. Are they still thinking of having it, or was it not in this report because it's not going to continue another year?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett, probably a little bit of a confusion there because Planning and Infrastructure actually coordinated that event. Yeah. So, however, that was a grand opening for the skating rink, so I'm not sure that we'll do a grand opening every year for the same skating rink in the same location. So, something that certainly we can work with the folks and talk about whether or not that's something that we have as big of an event, but certainly could have a day of which the fire pits are out there, perhaps on a family day or something like that.
Councillor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Well, this is a lovely report that we get. One of the things that quite often has disappointed me, and it is the projects that we do with multiple groups within our community, and yet I don't see any acknowledgement for them in the participation of what we do as a community. And quite often, a lot of that stuff would not happen without the partnerships that we have with the multiple groups in this community. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to, make, I don't know if it's a recommendation or if it's just a short little blurb of the different organizations that contribute to the functions that go on within our community that help to bring this community as a whole together.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, Council's well aware, as is the administration. Yeah, there's a lot of partnership on big events and small events, and without reading through each one of these every time, I would expect that there's probably some instances where we'll refer to, the kinsmen on New Year's Eve or so on and so forth. But I would expect too that we won't note in this particular report each and every partner that we would work with on, whether it's the programming or so on and so forth, because there's, quite frankly, there's just almost an endless amount of them. We do, I know, we recognize those groups and those events in different ways when we have the particular event on, whether it's just verbally recognizing them, or I know some stuff we'll put ads out into the paper or on social media thanking our partner of such and such with so on and so forth. So I think that's, if speaking to the recognition part, I think that's one aspect of it. It's something we could bear in mind when we we could just double check when we're, saying a specific event in this report to bear in mind, make sure to notice or note the particular partner that we were involved with in that one, if that makes sense, Your Worship. I'll leave it at that if there's any other question or thought or whatever.
I think that makes sense. And so with Councillor Pletchko, if we can just have a footnote of saying that this is not possible without our community partners, because one of the things that I see here was the Christmas light up. Well, there was dozens of community partners that opened up and did stuff. So for us to list each one, how much paper are we going to use? And what if we miss one or two of the partners? That's probably worse than if us not mention it and just have a lineup. Thank you for all the partners that made this possible. Would give them that acknowledgement because they know who they are. Like if we list them all, if we miss one, that's where the complication comes in. Good point. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Your Worship. I refer to page 86 of 97, and that would be the corporate plan initiatives. And I go down to the initiative that says Gator. Percent spent is 118%, and then complete. Was that an over expenditure then? Because all the rest of them that are completed would just say 100.
That's not correct because some of them, if Deputy Mayor, if you look at some of the initiatives that are spent, for example, the utility trailer, it's 44.09% and it's complete.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
Maybe
100% as in dollars that was budgeted. So the mower was 64.8% and it's complete. So we got that under our budget.
Right. So I guess that's what I'm saying, that this particular Gator, that is my question, that 118%, it was over.
It was 18% more than what we approved in the budget versus some of the other ones which were complete.
Just a clarification. That's all I wanted. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, I like it when there's when we complete it under 100%.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate the procurement side for doing these types of things. And but it just, lots of times when it jumps up, these things either are in brackets or whatever. It's just, it's the only item.
Yes, and as council realizes, again, this is a different format again, just to provide more of a visual on where things are, because when we just have it as a list line item, it's hard to see all initiatives and stuff. As this is a little more visual for people that require visual learning versus just reading.
It's appreciated. Thank you.
Councilor Lori?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration, referring to page 84 in the operating projects. Under the planning and infrastructure, there's the CN Tree Canada project, which was at a budget of $50,000 and is showing completed at $44,761. This is a $25,000 matching grant that we applied for through CN and Tree Canada. And it was actually a fantastic event, and I'm very, very impressed with what was done. I am, however, disappointed to see that on what was supposed to be a matching grant, we're 10.5% under the budget for it. At any point in time, we would usually be happy to be 10.5% under budget, but being that this is a matching grant and that this was an environmental project, this leaves me with a little bit of concern. So I'm looking for an answer on two questions. One is, why did we not spend the full $50,000? And two, is this shortage of $5,239 specifically the town of Stony Plains contribution, or is this split 50-50 and approximately $2,600 was returned to CN and Tree Canada?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Lori. This was a 50-50 split, but we did receive the full $25,000 because we were able to claim some of our staff costs to make it up to the 25. So what you're seeing for the 44,000, that was the cost of the trees that we planted. And also we did recover some of the costs that from the event. So we received more than what they had initially told us.
So this $5,239 that's showing as essentially a shortage from that 50,000, you're saying is the cost then of the staff time and the materials to put the project on?
Right, we were able to claim that amount and receive the full grant.
Okay, why wouldn't that be reflected in the expenditure side of it?
Because the staff time is recorded under salaries in whichever area it's applicable, And this was only recording the cost of the trees that we used for the event.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I have one more.
Go ahead.
That's okay. Referring to pages 80 and 81 in respect to the facilities and facility usage, I love seeing the numbers, I love seeing the report, and it's great to see a comparable to last year. I think I've asked this before, and I'm hoping that we can have some more conversation and maybe continue around it. What I would like to see in this report is what that number translates into in regards to the availability. So when we speak to the pavilion was used for a total of 517.5 hours, I don't know if that was 50% of the time available, 70% of that time available, 30% of the time available. And I also understand there's a significant difference between peak time and non-peak times. And I'm wondering if it would be possible in future reports to get a little bit more of that understanding, even if it was an approximate understanding, to say that a total of 517.5 hours, which is approximately X% of available time. Was that something from administration that would be possible in future reports?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in reference to page 81, there's a nice pie chart there, and it says joint use. What group would that be? What groups would that be? Sorry. Sorry, through Your Worship, to administration. I'm sorry.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer, that's school groups. So joint uses related to our agreements that we have with both the Evergreen and public school divisions.
So just a quick follow-up. So that would be like them skating on the ice, I imagine?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer. So absolutely, that's when school classes go during school time to utilize our facility.
Okay, and then just a comment. So just to the rest of council, I did bring up a couple weeks ago regarding Ringette's opportunities to use our ice, and I would just point out that they are the lowest group on that pie chart. And then if you look at the Q4 usage directly below it compared to last year, they have somehow, despite being the smallest group, still managed to lose some availability. So other than that, I just point that out.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments for you on this? Okay, Councillor Matties.
Your Worship, I have a question or a comment with regards to page 64. Let's see. If I could get there myself, just please. In terms of page 64, it was with regards to the breakdown of our new businesses in 2018 with regards to retail and service, contractors, home-based. And I do really appreciate having that information, but we talked before about maybe breaking it down a little further. So for example, with regards to commercial industrial businesses, so we get a better indication of what businesses are coming to the community and which ones are not. I would appreciate having a little bit more detail about that. And then secondly, with regards to page 65, which is related to marketing and promoting our community, and so we talked about Shop the Season, and it was presented in the Where Edmonton magazine, and of course that readership touches or has 2,010 people per issue. Sorry, the estimated readership is 210,000 per issue. But my point is that in terms of other marketing initiatives that we have done to ensure that that some of the great features about our community are featured, for example, whether that is direct marketing to realtors in Edmonton, that either they're in a position of maybe referring them to our community, people to our community, or to maybe a business to our community, making sure that, and the thing that was very interesting to me is our Stony Plain stat plan with our key priorities, that little booklet. Well, if we had something like that that talked about some of our key features in the community and made sure that we market that to those groups, so I would sure like to see that. And I'd like to see that noted in here.
So as a fourth quarter report, or just?
Well, yeah, for, each quarter, what are we doing to, for example, if in this case, this was shop the season, but let's talk about, initiatives that we have throughout the whole summer, or different programming that we have in place. That could go under culture and tourism. It could go under events that we have. But how are we promoting those things? And it should be reported in here. I should be able to read it and know that we have been out there and let people know who we are as a community.
Okay. I think some of those events were reported in the previous quarter reports, because this is just the fourth quarter.
But I have seen.
So we won't be promoting summer sessions in the fourth quarter of 2018, because that happened in the second quarter and third quarter of last year, which we did see the report on it and did say how much the attendance was, and there was some photos of that. So
I agree with what you're saying, except for that I do think that there should be more in here reflecting, and the example I gave about realtors and communicating with regards to some of the specific features of our community. I think we should be noting that we're doing it.
And a lot of those special features could come through different avenues, as this is a general fourth quarter report to our residents. Some residents don't need to know some of that information. Our realtors do, our businesses do, right? Which, you asked a good question about breaking up the business license. That's more of an in-depth conversation for members of the Growth and Commerce Task Force, and not for the general public. Okay, like there has to be a line of where information is an overload to what it is.
But I've been here for a year and a bit, and I haven't had any of that information, and I certainly don't know a lot about the marketing that we're doing, and I know that we can do better than that. So to me, I think it should be in part of this as well as other venues.
Yeah.
Where we can, right? I'm not.
Where we can. Okay. Any other questions, comments regarding the fourth quarter status report? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much, administration, for providing that. As you can tell, this is a list of not all of the activities that happened in the fourth quarter, because if everything was listed, we will have a book. So again, these are just highlights of it. And I don't know, I don't think it's council's direction to highlight certain things. I think administration will take care of that and highlight what they need to be. If we need more in-depth things, that should come through other avenues. I would expect the administration to be following up with the previous process of shooting this out through our social media channels of what we've done and completed over the last quarter. So, and will we be leaving booklets at our facilities for people to read, like our town office, the library, et cetera, so that residents that come in and out, and even non-residents that come in, to be able to read that and access that. So with that, Councillor Mattis already has the motion on, so I'll call the question. All in favor for information? And that is done. Thank you. Moving on to council information items and council discussions. And Councillor Mattis, we'll start with you.
Regards to the Pioneer Museum, I attended that meeting on behalf of Harold. First of all, I just wanted to say with regards to such an inspirational group, I mean, these are volunteers, and one example they provided is that there's 70 volunteers at the Pioneer Museum, and they were at another community in Saskatchewan where they had 200 volunteers, and that community was so proud of the hours that those volunteers had spent, and actually our 70 volunteers had provided more volunteer hours than their 200. So it's just, such a hardworking group of people. In terms of the, they had mentioned that they were finally at a milestone where they were, well, not finally, but they were now being seen more as a place, as a destination. versus being always promoted more with town events. So they are starting to stand more and more on their feet with that, and so it's very, very positive. Oh, and then the other comment was with regards to the Parkland County and the funding, and I'd like to be able to encourage Parkland County to get a contract done with the Pioneer Museum. No different than every community or every municipality in Alberta, we are asking for MSI and for having predictability in terms of our funding to be able to plan for the future, and no different than that organization. So I would really like to encourage Parkland County to get that done so that they do have predictable funding so they can plan for a period of 3 years. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Really, too much, Your Worship. We're going through another cold spell, and going to get a reprieve from that and then get another one, and it's just going to play havoc on our roads. I have seen some potholes filled, which is encouraging, and I just want to applaud the work that the department does to keep on top of things, because it's not a very easy chore this time of year. Thank you.
Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just a couple of things. Duly noted that the golf course is about to embark upon a new venture over there, and I think it's quite exciting and well worth some advertising and some promotion to let people know that we have a new facility manager over there that's going to look after food and move things forward. So I think that's a really positive thing for our community, and a great thing for the golf course, I think, going forward. Hopefully it is in the best benefit of all of us. And secondly, over the past year, I've spent a fair bit of time with a number of community organizations within the community that are very supportive for a number of initiatives that the community puts on. But it seems to me that each time that I have a conversation with them, they're a bit disappointed in the recognition they get from the town. So what I'm wondering is how we would recognize those groups that, and I'm thinking more of the groups that do large projects with us. You know, again, Rotary is a good one, Kinsman's a good one, the Co-op's a good one. How we would acknowledge them a little bit better so that they get a little more of the recognition within the community that they deserve for the projects they're doing. You know, I noticed I was down Family Day here in town, and didn't quite realize what the Kinsmen have actually done for our facility down there. You know, we have a kitchen because of them, and it's not well noted within our community. In fact, I didn't know nothing about it until I actually got told by some individuals there. So number of places that I've been throughout the past year with some of the organizations that put things on. And I'm just wondering, when we were in Wetaskiwin, some of the things that we seen was at their new facility was they had certain individuals that contributed some nice numbers to different events, and they had nice little plaques that stood out. Not blended in with stuff, but they actually stood out. So people understood who our community partners were. And I think it's quite important, if we're going to move forward with our community partners, that we figure out a way that we can acknowledge these community partners so that they do stand out a little bit in our community. I understand that we have the smaller groups too that do a fair bit of stuff in it, but their recognition is a little bit different than what the big volunteers are putting some money into our stuff. So if there's any possible way that administration can come up with some good ideas that will keep to encourage our large partners to continue to partner with us, and we give them some small recognition in some ways so that people within our community know that they're contributing to the community.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship, and just a comment to Councillor Pletchko. Boy, you could have saved our mayor's task force several meetings with with that observation. But on what I actually wanted to share was I had the opportunity to attend my first Sturgeon River Watershed Alliance Steering Committee today, and what most stood out for me was they are moving along, well, we are moving along on a plan for the health of our water systems in this area, and it's been moving along for a year and a half, and we've more or less just caught the tail end of this one. We can expect to be presented a management plan. I forget the first letter now, but the plan will be coming out mid-April. They will be looking to have administration presented with something, and I would of course encourage all of council to, when that appears, I'll keep you informed. Otherwise,
Thank you for the update. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that in the last couple of weeks, council has been invited to a couple grand openings of new businesses here in town. One was a new business retail store called War and Peace. And unfortunately, I was ill that night. Even though I had indicated that I would go, I was unable to attend. But the second one was True Wood Artisans. That was just last Friday. Friday. And it was wonderful. The owners, the business people that open these, I think they're very surprised when council actually attends their grand openings, and it's always great to see the enthusiasm of new businesses. So I would just encourage our economic development department to continue to encourage businesses to invite council. I think that it's a really important step that we take in welcoming new businesses and showing them that the town cares and wants to be involved in their successes. So that's just something that I would like to bring up. Our economic development officer, by the way, and his staff are good about attending these and making sure that they bring ingredients from the town. But when a councillor or you, Mr. Mayor, attend, it's even more flattering, I think, for the businesses. So just encourage them to, if they're opening or remodeling, and to invite us to those kinds of events.
Yes, and both events were very good. I attended both of them. We had a good visit with it. And the True Woods is actually very, very interesting because, as council is aware, it used to be called Hollywood's Fine Furniture. And now they've actually increased that to do more artisan cutting boards, everything else. So the stuff that you can find in that facility is just phenomenal. So Holly and their staff there and the partners do a great job. And War and Peace, Stuart and Joelle, yeah, they form War and Peace. One does the war side, one does the peace side. So it is a very interesting concept. If you haven't had a chance to go in there, step in and have a look. And usually Stuart's there, so he'll say hi. That's very good comments on our economic development. Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things this evening. First, I wanted to start off, I attended a webinar in respect to the Edmonton Region Program Mapping Initiative, and they were actually very excited to have somebody from Stony Plain on there, as it's one of the only municipalities in the region that they have yet to gain some participation from. It's a great program, and essentially what they're trying to do is they are utilizing data from all the municipalities around Edmonton to collect and provide essentially a program mapping or a program guide for residents. As we talk about, our residents don't necessarily see borders. So they're trying to compile a listing, of a mapping or a grouping of all the programs that are offered in our entire region. So everything from social service programs and things like that that are put on through FCSS to our simple programs for the town, like our ballroom dancing and so on and so forth. So I would encourage administration to hopefully look into that a little bit. I'd like to see us participating in that. I think it sounds like a really good initiative, and there's absolutely zero cost in participating to it, and it may help us in attracting residents from further away from our community into the town of Stony Plain to continue to grow our region and our economic growth. As well, I wanted to say thank you very much for the inclusion with the presentation to Spruce Grove Council last week in respect to the recreation facility. It was some fantastic dialogue between yourself, Mr. Hill, and Councillor Meyer and the Spruce Grove Council. Unfortunately, that seemed to happen on an evening where a majority of us had meetings. Councillor Meyer and I even had to fly there and make sure we got out of MPC in time to make it. So we're glad we were able to support you. And for those of you who had to attend other meetings, it was a very informative and very positive meeting. It was a great discussion with Spruce Grove, and I think it'll be very good for us for our continued relationship as we work towards this facility. I did also want to share, we had our Regional Transit Service Commission transition team meeting last Thursday. That initiative continues to move forward at a very, very fast pace. There is a rapid working group being put together that will, at our next month meeting, put together the entire work plan to have the framework ready for presentation to all municipalities by this October. So it is a very, very ambitious timeline, and I look forward to seeing what that will look like and how that will assist and aid in the transportation network in our community and how we can participate in that to better serve our residents. We mentioned a little bit about the roads. I have noticed some road work going on, which is great. There's two areas that I'd like to pass on to administration. One is on 43rd Avenue, east of South Park Drive. Virtually stretches across the entire road. There's quite a set of potholes there, as well as 49th Avenue westbound off of Golf Course Road as you come through the turning lane, especially next to the curb. There's some significant potholing going on along there. It's been a busy couple of weeks, and as Councillor Loy said, the weather doesn't seem to be cooperating too much. So again, kudos to the work that's being done. Hopefully second, third, fourth, and fifth winter are soon done, and we can move on to spring soon. So that's all for me this evening. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. So, members of council, we had a great, very good presentation with General Manager Hill, and thank you for Councillor Laurie and Councillor Meyer to leave and quickly finish MPC so they can join me. It was a good conversation with members of the City of Spruce Grove and the Mayor. So it sounds like there's good discussion, good conversation, and I look forward to that conversation as I made a promise to them that we'll continue through our open process of consulting with our regional partners and residents of all three municipalities so that we can actually have the best design forward for the recreational campus. I want to make sure that when we pull the trigger, that it is the absolute best thing that we can build at this point in time with the money that we do have. So looking forward to that. And also had a chance to go down to Red Deer to attend a little bit of the Canada Winter Games. And I networked with quite a few mayors, and I asked them about their recreational facilities and how they use that as employment drivers, rooftop drivers, and sport tourism is a big thing these days, especially when there's, the economy is down, but sports is still up. A lot of families are still doing their sports, and that's the tourism that we're generating in dollars is through sport tourism. So we'll continue that discussion. With that, thank you very much, administration, for your work and the presentations. Council, thank you for reading the packages and adding to the conversation and the discussions around the table. With that, meeting is adjourned.